Welcome to Mr. News Art Class. It's wonderful to build a PC with you. That's something different. Today this is my son and myself, building a computer for my father, Scott's grandfather, who requested a machine to be built that has at least 1 teraflop. And if you know anything about teraflops, you know that modern graphics cards have a whole lot more than 1 teraflop. And so we did. We built him a computer that has 9.1 teraflops. We started out with the motherboard and the processor. This is a Ryzen 5600X processor. Very fast, very speedy. And we had to look at YouTube and look at the instructions to figure out how to put on the cooler for that CPU. Don't tell nobody we had to look at the instructions. Anyway, once we got the CPU and CPU cooler in place, we opened up the case and swapped out the fans. The case came with 2 fans built in, but we took those out and replaced them with better fans that have better airflow and that have RGB lighting, because aesthetics are important. It's important to make the computer look nice, as well as, perform fast. There are some people who will tell you that the RGB lighting makes it a faster computer, and, whether it makes it faster or not doesn't really matter. It makes it look nice. That's what it's all about. Anyway, once we get those fans in place, the next step is going to be to put the motherboard in the case. And in order to do that, this particular case, the motherboard stands, the standoffs, were not previously installed, so we had to install those. And to tighten them up, we got some tools out of the garage. The first tool was a little slow, so we went back out and got a much quicker ratchety tool. And once we got those motherboard standoffs in place, we were able to put the motherboard in nice and smooth. Now, that Ryzen 5600X processor has 6 cores with hyperthreading, so 12 threads, and it has a max boost clock of, I think, 4.6 gigahertz. Really screaming fast processor. We also have on that motherboard 32 gigabytes of DDR4 3200 megahertz. So screaming fast memory too, with a CAS latency of 16, I believe. And of course, the memory also has RGB. For all of our RGB in this build, we're using Corsair products. So the fans are Corsair, the memory is Corsair, the keyboard is Corsair, the light strips are Corsair. And the reason for that is because the Corsair brand has a phenomenal iCUE software that helps make all of the lighting sync up really nicely, and it just makes everything so much easier if it's all from the same brand. You don't have to individually change the light settings on all the different parts. You can do it all in one go. At this point, we are installing the power cables so that we can get the power supply ready to go into the case. And the power supply is an EVGA Supernova 500GA. And this is where we get 9.1 teraflops with a GeForce RTX 3050 graphics card. That is way more graphics card than my parents are going to need, but it'll help with any of the photo editing kind of stuff that my mom is going to be doing. She does a bunch of quilting, and she has some desires to do some photo manipulation to go along with that, print things onto fabric and all that. So that'll handle all of those needs easily for years and years to come. And at this point in the build, we are just cable managing, making sure everything is going through properly, and getting all the cables hidden in the back part of the computer. and making sure we get all of our RGB lighting strips installed, and the controllers that control those lights, making sure everything is put where it needs to be. And once we got all of that set up, we did a test run before we put all the panels back onto the case. Make sure that we got the BIOS set up properly, make sure all the lights turn on the way they're supposed to, make sure we install Windows, and at that point it's just waiting and making sure that Windows installs properly. Then we spent some time looking at the lights inside and talking about how we wanted to move things around to make it look more aesthetically pleasing. And right about this point in time, Windows finished installing, and it's ready for my dad to set up and log in. And so we put everything back together, made sure we put the case back together, cable managed all the cables and wires that are in the back of the case, and hid those out of the way so we could put the back panel on the case, the side panel on the case. And this is 9.1 teraflops in a Fractal Meshify C case. Fancy schmancy.